I don't know.
Since I've had this, I can sit there for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then my bones and everything just start aching like crazy.
Oh, really?
You want one of these?
No,
I can bring it
I'll
over.
try this.
I can bring it over if you want. Bob, I know you'll appreciate this one. You like Joe. Okay, read that.
So my wife says, seals and the.
It's the first verse.
But no, I think they won't like it.
Yeah.
Like, give it a lot.
You know what that means?
So I can't help it.
Not deep, it's a joke. Oh. It means men are gonna get to heaven a half hour before women.
Well, the husband says to his wife, he says, you need to embrace your mistakes. So she gave him a hug.
That's a good.
Those were so cute, people really like those, the decorations. Okay. Yeah.
Tell my wife that one.
I did
Bob.
see
She'll
that.
like that.
Oh,
It'd be good like for
the
you.
husband says to
Yes,
his wife, he
exactly.
says, you need to embrace your mistakes. So she gave him a hug.
Oh, I like that.
I don't like that. Switch spots.
How's Angie?
There-
She's better? Yeah. Good. Yeah, she didn't sound too good on Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday, we were going back and forth. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's too bad, she got quite a case.
She's been getting hit hard.
Yeah, that's not fun. I didn't really know it was going around so much. I haven't heard anybody with it.
No, no. I heard it was back, still here, but
Yeah, I just hadn't heard. I like too.
I'm hurt.
You are not. You tell me you like that. It's for stuff that well, like I said, they're different sizes. Would keep a wrap but it might be a cold box of or dishes.
Good morning. Hey Ron, would you mind leading us in an opening prayer, please? Go ahead, I think there's a couple people come down the hallway, give it about 30 seconds. You can go ahead, Ron.
Will you pray with me? Father in heaven, we're thankful for the many blessings that you shower on us daily. We're thankful for this beautiful Lord's Day that you've given us. We can gather together and study thy word. Ask thy blessings on the teachers, that they may have a better recollection of those things that they have studied and wish to present to us. May we take them in our mind and our hearts, and that we may know better what is expected of us as thy children. Be with us now as we study thy word. Be with us always, we ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ron. All right, we're in chapter 44 of Genesis, chapter 44. And there's parts of this chapter and the chapter before that I think sometimes are a little difficult to understand. And in some areas, I have a few options of what is going on here, because I'm not 100% sure what the correct analysis would be of certain statements that are made. It could be a couple different things that the author is trying to get through to us. In chapter 44, like I said, there are some things that might be difficult to understand, maybe a little confusing in some respects, but that's not always unusual in the scriptures. There's always areas that are difficult and confusing sometimes that is hard to understand without further study. I raised a question when I left last week too, because this is part of what we're going to discuss here initially. It says, when Joseph, back in chapter 42, said that his brothers were spies. He said his brothers were spies. Did Joseph know that his brothers were not spies? Yes, he knew they weren't. So is that a lie? Yeah, it does seem to appear to be a lie.
He had a purpose. I mean, he couldn't just do things to them without having like a plan set up, like something set up.
I think you're on the right track, and we're going to get into a little bit of what you're talking about here as we go through here. But before I go any further with this, before we discuss what you're talking about, let's read verses 1 through 5 of chapter 44 in Genesis. Now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of his house: fill them in sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain. And he did as Joseph said. As morning dawned, the men were sent out on their way with their donkeys. They had not gone far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, "Go after those men at once, and when you catch up with them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid good with evil? Isn't this the cup my master drinks from and uses for divination? This is a wicked thing you have done.'" Now, how did the cup get in Benjamin's sack in the first place? Because it says the youngest, so that's Benjamin. How does the cup get in there in the first place? It's the silver
of the
cup.
house.
Huh?
The steward of the house put it in.
Yes. Joseph
With-
instructed him to do it, didn't he?
Yes.
And then he runs after and said, why did you steal my cup? Is Joseph just being kind of mean here? Is he just toying with his brothers for fun? Is he just setting them up for failure? Because they can't win this one. They're gonna lose. Why is Joseph doing this?
I feel like he's doing it to work on their hearts.
Okay,
Like it's purposeful.
okay,
It's not mean, it's not vengeful, because you see that he understands that God has put him in this position, because he says later on, what you meant for evil, God meant for good, right?
Okay.
So he understands that, so he's not coming from a place of revenge.
okay. Any other thoughts?
I don't know, I like messing with my brother.
I think that there's some truth to that for a lot of us. Also too, was it true that earlier on Benjamin's brothers said, "We are honest men"? How do you think that reacted in the mind of Joseph?
He probably coughed.
Yeah, I wanna puke, you know? It probably didn't go over real well. Joseph's life was filled at times with a lot of dishonest things people were doing around him. For instance, his brothers earlier on claimed he was a liar for prophesying twice that they were gonna someday bow down before him. And they actually took actionable offense towards him because they were so convicted that he was lying about what he said, that they persecuted him horrifically for what they did. And as a matter of fact, they were gonna kill him initially, and then they ended up selling him into slavery. Just out of curiosity too, you know what the penalty in the United States is for kidnapping or trafficking someone into slavery?
That was life.
It's 20 years to life. You can't commit too many federal crimes that are much worse than that, other than murder itself. So this is an extremely serious crime in all ages, although some cultures didn't always look at it that way. So in God's mind, do you think God was very happy with these guys for doing what they did? No way. It's unfathomable. Also, there was another time somebody lied about Joseph. Who was the other one?
Potiphar's wife.
Yeah, she claimed he attacked her. And it was a complete, total fabrication. So Joseph grew up in his adult life with a lot of lying and conniving and cruel lies at that caused great difficulties for Joseph in his life. And like I said, 20 years to life is the penalty for slavery. Well, he ended up getting the penalty. He was a slave for 20 years. So, and I came up with 3 scenarios, and I'm gonna run them off to you. And I'm not sure which one of these scenarios is correct, or whether they all have some truth in them, and you can kind of pick and choose as you go along. So I'm not sure here, but I'll run them to you. Number 1 is the reason Joseph, in other words, said his brothers were spies, was through God. God needed to discipline them, the brothers that is, for their own good, and he directed Joseph to say what he said about them spying to bring out the guilt in them. Was the guilt brought out in them because of these events?
Started to surface.
Huh?
A little bit surface.
Yeah. It does say too that when all these things starts happening to them, bad things relating to Joseph, what's the first thing they say among themselves?
God's getting them back.
Yeah, God's punishing them for the things they did 20 years ago. So if that's the scenario, God's directing Joseph to do this, to bring out their guilt, and why would God want to bring out their guilt?
Repentance.
Yeah, that's what discipline's all about too. You can see that in the New Testament. The guilt is important to bring out, and it does seem like it was successful in that respect. Another scenario could be that it's possible, when you think about it, when Joseph sees his brothers, Joseph is the prime minister of the land of Egypt. Do you think every Tom, Dick, and Harry, when they wanted grain, came straight to Joseph? Or did they probably go to underlings first?
Joseph probably never touched the grain.
Yeah,
It wasn't anywhere near it.
yeah. And this is the way it is probably in most governments too. We can even see that in the story of Moses when he's talking to his father-in-law about dividing up responsibilities. I doubt very much that Joseph was the first one to interview anybody about grains. He was looking at the bigger picture. But perhaps his servants who interviewed his brothers may have thought, these guys are spies. I don't know why they would say that. This is just speculation. It could have been that his servants thought these guys are spies and came to Joseph and said, hey, you need to check these guys out for yourself. We think there's something suspicious about them. They're from the land of Canaan. So what do you think Joseph could have reacted to those charges if his Egyptian servants were saying something about these people from Canaan, and that's where he's from? How do you think Joseph would have reacted to that? What would be the wise thing for Joseph to do?
Not to say anything.
Perhaps.
Well, to appear as if he was taking it seriously, and then said that he wanted to interview them himself.
Yeah. I think it's possible that he didn't want to look partial to the Canaanites. He said, all right, I'll check him out. And they thought he was spies, so the first thing he leads with is what his servants were telling him, you guys are spies. So it may have been that he was being political in this respect and want to respect his Egyptian servants because, you know, they're important to him too, because he is the prime minister at this point, and he doesn't want to make it look like he's playing favorites with anybody, especially his own people from his own country. So that's a possibility too. That's number two. Number three could be that Joseph himself, without God's direction, wanted to just see Benjamin. I think I could see that. He wanted to see his brother Benjamin because he hadn't seen him in a long time. And also, he may have wanted to test his brothers to see if they had changed, to see how they could handle themselves since he's now in authority over them. Can you handle an accusation like you gave me earlier in my life? How are you gonna handle it if the tables are turned here? And he said, he accused them of falsely prophesying, and now they're bowing down to him. The old expression, the shoe's on the other foot now, kind of fits a little bit too. If you put your left foot on your right foot, what's gonna happen when you try to put that shoe on the wrong foot? It's not gonna fit, and it's not gonna be fun. This is once again another example of, remember we talked about this a few weeks ago, an idiom. Did anybody remember the definition of an idiom? What was that?
It's something that doesn't give you any clues to the meaning when you hear it.
Right.
Like, it's just so random that you're not going to figure it out through a context clue.
Yeah. The literal words don't always
Make
tell you
any
what
sense.
it really means. Wayne?
The other thing, you know, I was thinking here, when they were going back and forth these couple of times, I assume that took some time. And I think that gave their hearts, it gave time for their hearts to be worked upon. And they were with each other, and they were probably talking about all this. And so there was some wisdom in that traveling back and forth. I think if it all just happened instantly, I don't know if you would have got the same effect. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, it could be, yeah. All right, let's read on here now, verse 6. And we'll talk about the divination a little bit further along. Somebody may have some questions about that. So, verse 6, when he, that's the servant, caught up with them, he repeated these words to them, which is the words that were just in the paragraph before. But they said to him, why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver we found inside the mouths of our sacks. Why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If any of your servants is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my Lord's slaves. Why in the world would the brothers declare the punishment like this? That's pretty severe, isn't it? Why in the world would they make a suggestion themselves of the punishment, and one that even included the death of one of their own number? Why would somebody say that?
They're making a bet they know they can't lose.
What do you mean by that? Go ahead.
They know or they believe that none of what this guy is saying is true.
That could be true.
And so they're gonna bet the house.
Yep. Yeah. Bet the house.
That's why they put,
Yeah.
the death penalty.
That is a possibility. Anything else? Could it be also too that that by volunteering such a penalty, it may appear to be a righteous declaration? In other words, sometimes when we're asked about something maybe we have done, or and people want to know, is this true? And some people may respond in such a way as to say, I swear to God, I'm telling you the truth. Or I swear on 1,000 stacks of Bibles. These are phrases or things that are meant a way of building evidence of innocence by using bold, exaggerated statements. So it's either this one or the one Glenn, I think, suggested is probably the more possible explanations for why they would actually suggest such a thing. But I think it was unwise to even say it in the first place, but they did do it. Now, does Joseph practice divination? What is divination?
I've seen divination done to find water. You know,
Oh, okay, yeah,
like a divining
with the
rod.
stick thing or whatever, yeah. I think this is a different kind of divination.
I think it's the idea of being able to foretell future events through almost witchcraft as opposed to through God's prophecy.
Yeah, this is an evil form.
So it's like a Ouija board.
Yeah, that's a good example, a Ouija board type thing. It is definitely a situation that, should Christians or even Jewish people be involved with this?
No.
Absolutely not. I mean, witchcraft was condemned from the very beginning, and anything like this was condemned in the law itself. So it just seems highly unlikely that Joseph truly did practice divination. So why in the world did he say that he could do divination? Why was it stated? I want you to think, who is Joseph?
He's to the people around him, he's an Egyptian, which would have been very common in that culture.
It would be. And part of the whole scenario that he's playing out, he's playing the part of an idol worshiping Egyptian. So to make the whole thing even make it look more difficult for the brothers, and I'm sure this made them squirm even more, where he says, I can see the future. I know what you're doing even before you do it. And I'm sure it probably scared them even more. And that's part of the whole thing that I think that Joseph and perhaps the Lord is doing in this particular case. So it's kind of a scary thing, I think, for them to even hear this. So then let's look at verse 10 now. And I'm going to read 10 through 13. Each one quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. And the steward proceeded to search, beginning with the oldest and ending with the, I meant to start with 10. Verse 10, very well then, he said, let it be as you say. Whoever is found to have it will become my slave. The rest of you will be free from blame. Each of them quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. Then the steward proceeded to search, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this, they tore their clothes, and they all loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. So after they make this proclamation that the guilty one should die and the rest of them become slaves, the servant says, oh, very well then, let it be as you say. It's almost like, oh, okay, if that's the way you want it, okay, we'll do it that way. I can see him just going, why did we say that? That was a dumb thing to say. Maybe we should have waited to see what he had to say. So what's interesting about this though too is as time goes on, we're gonna see that that the servant himself changes the punishment. What does he change it to?
Only the one who stole the cup will be a slave, the rest will be free.
Yeah, so that's a lot less than what they were suggesting. Just one would become a slave and the rest would go free. So they lower their sacks to the ground and the steward begins the search, starting with Reuben, the oldest, and runs it all the way down to Benjamin, and guess where the silver cup was? Right in Benjamin's sack. And then it says, and they tore their clothes. Was that because they're getting ready to go buy some new clothes, or why did they tear their clothes?
Agony.
Yeah. It's a sign of, in their culture at that time, I think what they did is they just grabbed their collars and ripped downward like that. It was a sign of just horror, aghast, mourning, deep sadness, because as it was said already, they weren't expecting anyone to have the cup. They were probably just totally in shock that the cup was indeed. And worst of all, it was in Benjamin's sack. And I'm sure that didn't go over real well. So they quickly load their donkeys and they returned back to the city. Any questions or comments so far? All right, let's begin reading verse 14. Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers came in, and they threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, what is this you have done? Don't you know that a man like me can find out things by divination? Here we go with that divination again. And it does seem like, notice who's the first brother who's mentioned in this setting here. Who is it? It's Judah. Yeah, Judah's the one who's being mentioned. And it seems like from here on out, Judah is going to be the main focus of the brothers with the steward and with Joseph. So in verse 16 it reads, what can we say to my lord? Judah replied. What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. Does that sound like a contradictory statement? Notice he says, how can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. When I initially read that, that sounds like a contradiction. How do you make sense of that?
They're innocent of the one crime of stealing, but they're not innocent.
Correct.
They're
Yes.
not completely innocent of everything.
Yeah, and it's something for Judah to say that, because it sure shows that all their consciences are still bugging them about Joseph, but they can't prove, although he thinks they're innocent, of the crime of stealing the cup. Because I don't think any of them believe that Benjamin deliberately stole the cup. But they have no answer. They have no way of proving otherwise, because the proof was right in front of them. How do you argue your way out of that? So they just basically throwing their hands up. And Judah then says, we are now my Lord's slaves. Notice he says we. We ourselves and the one who's found to have the cup. So he's throwing everybody, all 11 of them, at the feet of Joseph here to be slaves from here on out. Notice also too when Joseph's steward, notice he appears to have changed the punishment himself. What does that tell you about the servant's relationship, probably with Joseph? Was this just an ordinary servant, or was he something else, perhaps? Okay. Laura's saying, I think it's something else. Why would we say that? Because I think you're right. Why does he take the authority and change the punishment?
Well, the steward of the house knew that he was told to put it there.
Yeah.
So he's given mercy, I mean, basically.
Yeah. But why would he give a mercy without first consulting with Joseph? You're right.
Yeah.
But why would he say, go ahead and do this without consulting? And this is the second time he's taken an actionable action. Because remember earlier on, they confessed to him that they had the silver in their bags. He told them, said, don't worry about it. God's with you.
So verse 6, it says, the servant caught up with the brothers and said to them what Joseph had told him to say.
Yeah.
Seems like this was somewhat rehearsed.
I think there's some degree of it, because you don't know for sure. Sometimes conversations are abbreviated. But I also suspect the servant was probably very close to Joseph. I think they knew each other's thoughts and intentions, and I think Joseph probably had a lot of confidence in this guy as his head, kind of like perhaps the situation between Potiphar and Joseph. Potiphar had absolute confidence in Joseph, and even now Pharaoh has absolute confidence in Joseph himself too, because of his abilities.
Joseph's history might not have been a secret. They might have known that his brothers sold him into slavery. They might have known. And then Joseph's telling his closest around him, these are my brothers. And they they're just, it sounds to me like they're in on it. They're just acting out this rehearsed scenario to get the outcome that they want. But Joseph would have confided in them if they're that close to him.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility that could be true too. It's hard to say. All right, going now to, notice he also says too that, like I said, at the very ending there, he says, the rest of you are gonna go back in peace, but Benjamin is what? What's the servant say?
He's gonna become his slave. Benjamin's gonna become his slave.
What's that?
Benjamin's gonna become Joseph's slave.
Correct. So Benjamin's gonna become the slave. You guys can all go back. All right, I wanna make a point about this particular scenario at this point in the history of these events. I think this is a moment frozen in time. The whole history of the world pivots here at this moment in time. Okay, am I overstating that? I'll tell you why I'm saying it. This is a big deal moment. Kind of almost on the lines of Abraham and Isaac and the sacrifice of Isaac on the altar. This is a big deal moment. And we'll find out by the end of the chapter why I am saying that. As far as the situation, what is God and Joseph looking to hear from the brothers after the penalty is announced, that Benjamin's staying, the rest of you are going? Could they have said, here's two scenarios. Could they have said, okay, sir, you have spoken. Oh, nothing we can do can change our situation. Go ahead and take the young man Benjamin. We'll depart now and go home And our father will just have to be reasonable and realize there was nothing we could do. It's God's will. Do you think that's a likely scenario? Given their past, these brothers, is that something Joseph might expect them to think and say? Notice this, I'm getting at what's in their minds too. Might they think this way?
Yeah, because Joseph doesn't know. Joseph doesn't know what his brothers are like. He's got a history with them that shows them a totally different. And Joseph can't see the end of the story either. He doesn't.
No. And he's looking at 20 years past too, isn't he?
We look at it from the end and know where it's going, but
Yes.
we're in the moment.
No.
I think that's why, because I always ask myself, why didn't he just not tell him right up front as soon as he met him?
Right.
He'd skip all this stuff. And
I thought that too.
And I think if he needed to make sure where they were at, plus, they might have just went back and disappeared and never even, because ultimately, at the end of the day, God's gotta get Jacob to Egypt.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's not, this is not just Joseph's doing. I think God's hand is in all that. Rick, did you want to say something?
Well, I was gonna say, he could have just said, the rest of you can go back, but he says, to your father in peace. Now, they went and lied because they sold him, and now the second favorite, Benjamin, the youngest, is now a slave. So that had to be agonizing. They did not want to go back again to the father, to Jacob.
No. How did that go the first time?
That good?
What do you mean by not good? Explain.
Yeah.
Almost killed us.
Almost killed him.
Yeah.
The news almost killed him. So, Joseph and perhaps God is pushing the buttons to find out what's in the minds of these 10 brothers. Were they still with the same mindset they had with Joseph 20 years earlier, or has something changed in the way they think about all these matters? Have they matured? Has God's discipline corrected or changed their minds and hearts in any way that is favorable? And we're going to find out in my second scenario, which is not my scenario. It's actually the scripture scenario, and I think it plays it out pretty well. We're going to start reading here. It's a longer reading until we get to the end, and then we'll have some questions. After after the servant says this, and Joseph agrees to this, then Judah went up to him and said, "Please, my lord, let your servant speak a word to my lord. Do not be angry with your servant, though you are equal to Pharaoh himself. My lord asked his servants, 'Do you have a father or brother?' And we answered, 'We have an aged father, and there is a young son born to him in his old age. His brother is dead, and he is the only one of his mother's sons left, and his father loves him.' Then you said to your servants, 'Bring him down here to me, so I can see him for myself.' And we said to my lord, 'The boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves him, his father will die.' But you told your servants, 'Unless the youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again.' When they went back to their servant's father and told him what my lord had said, then our father said, 'Go back and buy a little more food.' But we said, 'We cannot go down. If only our youngest brother is with us will we go. We cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Your servant my father said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One of them went away from me and said, he has surely been torn to pieces.'" By the way, is that a new information for Joseph?
Oh, yeah, he didn't know the story.
Yeah.
He didn't know what they told he doesn't know what his brothers told his dad.
Yeah, I'm sure Joseph is going, "Oh, so that's the story you told Dad."
Right.
Okay, so, "And I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in misery. So now if the boy is not with us, when I go back to your servant my father, and if my father, whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life, sees that the boy isn't here, he will die. Your servant will bring the gray head of our father down to the grave in sorrow. Your servant guaranteed the boy's safety to my father. I said, if I do not bring him back to you, I'll bear the blame before you all the days of my life. And remember back in chapter, what was that, 42? I think it was 42. No. It was further back, 37 maybe. No. Yeah, no, 38. Remember?
Yeah, he told him he could kill my two kids.
Well, that was what Reuben said.
Yeah.
But I'm getting at something that happened with Judah. Remember, after this whole event happened, and they deceived their father and lied to him, what does Judah do? Where's he go?
In the wilderness,
Yeah, he goes to the wilderness and lives with the Canaanites and marries a Canaanite woman. Why did he leave? We discussed it a little bit. Guilt. It was overwhelming to Judah to see his father mourn like that, knowing they were lying. And Joseph was probably still alive, and they were protecting their hind ends. Just so that, and their father was paying a dear price for their lies and their cruelty. So now we're here at a point in Judah's life. Judah's lived this scenario once before already. And he suffered a great deal, as well as his brothers, over 20 years of guilt for doing this horrible deed. And at this point, you have to think that Judah perhaps has learned a hard lesson, a very painful lesson, by God's loving discipline that's working its plan. So in this particular place, the last thing he wants to do is go back and say, Dad, you lost your second son now. And they know exactly what's going to happen with Jacob if he hears that news. So Judah comes up with a plan. And here's where I said there's a moment frozen in time. This is a big deal statement. Verse 33, then please let your servant remain here as my Lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come upon my father. And I get emotional just reading this. I mean, that had to be hard to say. That let me be the slave. I will take the punishment on myself because I cannot bear to go through this scenario again and go through this guilt again.
Jeff, remember in chapter 37, though, it's Judah that says, there's the people we sell it to. It was his decision to sell Joseph in the first place. And it does save his life, not kill him. It's like, they're weak, just sell him. So he can remember he's a lot to blame for Joseph being where he's at.
Absolutely, yeah. This is a tough moment in history. Can you think of anywhere else in the history of the world where one man offers himself up for the slaves of other, or for the sins of others?
Yeah.
Dean, who do you think that might be?
Yeah, Christ.
Yes, and this is a moment that is definitely picturing Christ's sacrifice for the sins of the world. This is a big deal. Sorry, I'm getting emotional just talking about it. This is a big deal for any human being to do something like this. And as a result of this, Judah is going to be taking a very prominent role in the history of Israel after this point. And what is that prominent role he's going to take?
Jesus comes from the line of Judah.
Yeah,
Line of Judah, line of David,
yeah, David, and then ultimately
Christ.
Christ.
And Judah was willing to give up his family. He stays in Egypt.
Yeah,
If he's got a lot of kids.
yeah.
I'm sure he's got some wives.
Yeah.
Give all that up.
And in the New Testament, there's different words for the word love. What's the Greek word for love in this spot? Clearly, this is agape. So at this turning point in history, and that's why I say it is, the brothers, correct me if you think I'm overstating this, the brothers have already confessed their sin to Joseph and to God. It's clear they're repentant and they're willing to take action. Judah, especially here, he's sacrificing himself. So Jacob and God's family is now finally on the road to be truly faithful to their God and family. Big change. Scumbags earlier in life, faithful to their God in the end. Took a little time. God had to work his discipline through very hard lessons, but they finally got the point. And everything works out for the better from this point on, and that'll be beginning in chapter 45. And one thing about chapter 45 too, we need to consider here too that sometimes when we look at these little snippets in history of what's going on in all these different events, we have to realize there's a much bigger plan going on here that God is working out in the history of the world here. You can go back to Genesis in the very beginning, and we'll cover that next week when we look at it, where God makes a promise to Abraham. That's the beginning. One man, one woman. He makes a promise to him, and we'll look at that promise. And we're going to look at what God is doing, how he worked things through history, and then we're going to take a snippet and look into the future, because we can do that because we have the book of Exodus, where they didn't have it. And we're going to see what God's plan was in the long run, why he's doing a lot of the things he's doing here are leading to other events of tremendous significance later on in history. So God has this all planned out for hundreds and hundreds of years before any of these events take place. These poor human beings are trying to scratch their head and figure out, what is God doing? Why is he doing all this stuff? Believe me, there is a very detailed, exacting plan that God has worked out, and we'll begin to talk about that next week. Any final questions or thoughts? All right, I'll see you, Lord willing, next week.
I don't think we're running out of time.
Time is